Okay, listen. I was really excited for this one. The Dead Zone had some promise. If you've been following my channel, you have seen that I have reviewed a lot of Stephen King books lately, and I was really giddy for this one because, of course, we meet a certain Frank Dodd that is mentioned in other books like Cujo and what have you. So I was really interested. Um, but of course, in true Stephen King fashion, at least in my view, this book was a bit of a disappointment. Okay, and I'll tell you why. It's so fascinating to me that our protagonist, John Smith, terrible name by the way, John Smith, when he was a little kid, he slipped out on ice and bonked his head, and from that moment onward, he had, psychic powers. And of course, uh, it is it is kind of alluded to that maybe the injury to his brain, no matter how minute, the injury to his brain, the contusion from the fall, damaged a little microscopic part of his brain, and that's how he got his powers. But of course, no, the fall itself, folks, uh, activated his shining abilities. Of course, this is so obvious. Stephen King thinks he's so smooth with it. He's not. In books like Firestarter, he tries to bamboozle us with this with this false lead that people get powers from taking certain government sponsored drugs. No, it's because the drugs activated their powers. John Smith got his powers by hitting his head. They were activated. The Shining was activated by hitting his head. It's so simple. Later on, he is an adult. He's on a date, and after that date, he is involved in a car accident and he is in a coma for a couple of years. And when he wakes from this coma, now his shining psychic powers are in full swing. Just by touching you, he has visions. He knows everything about you and he can predict the future. Okay? And when it comes to John Smith's powers, I have to say this. I love that by the end, John Smith can just by touching a mere object, he can have visions of the future. He can have visions of the distant past. Like in the end, when he goes to assassinate Stilson in this I don't know, this place, uh, he sits on, I think it's a courthouse or something, right? City Hall, maybe. He sits on wooden floors and he has a vision of the early 1900s, but that's not all. He has a vision of some of the people there. He has a vision of what they were talking about. He can see various minutia of these people. It's so detailed. This aspect of John Smith's powers is just so fascinating to me, right? That he can have visions of people almost 100 years beforehand, and what they did, and what they were, what kind of clothes they were wearing, and what they were talking about, and not only that, he can also sense what these people did, the bad things, what kind of people they were, what kind of thoughts they were, right? So he can predict or see the crimes that these people committed, and these people are long dead. They're ghosts. That one caught me by surprise. And Stephen King, in true fashion, he came out of the woodwork and he just wrote some crazy good stuff. Okay, but we're gonna go right to the topic at hand. Listen, I was I was a bit excited. I had expectations because, I've been reading books like Cujo, and there were all sorts of references to this guy, and needful things to this guy, Frank Dodd, the serial killer. And I was like, how is this all gonna tie in? What's up with this guy? He seems like he's a major figure in the Stephen King multiverse, right? So I was kind of excited. I had expectations. Okay, so uh, John Smith is hired by Chief Bannerman. Okay, Chief Bannerman, if you remember him from Cujo, he's the sheriff of Castle Rock. He hires John Smith to help him find this serial killer who just seems to escape and not leave a lot of traces behind, and because he's psychic. And I thought, listen, this is how my imagination works. I thought that this book was gonna be about John Smith and Chief Bannerman teaming up to find Frank Dodd, and I thought it was gonna be the classic cop and psychic, finding clues, having visions, predicting, you know, coming into contact with the killer, but the killer, escaping somehow. I thought it was gonna be something like this. We're gonna spend this book trying to capture Frank Dodd and stop what he is doing. It isn't so. Okay, it isn't so. I was so disappointed. It was like a sucker punch. Okay, the moment John Smith comes into contact with Frank Dodd for the first time. Frank Dodd is a police officer. He works in the Castle Rock police precinct. He is, a colleague with Chief Bannerman. The moment John Smith meets eye to eye with him, he immediately knows that Frank Dodd is the serial killer. Okay. Immediately, somehow, Frank Dodd also knows that the jig is up. Frank Dodd somehow senses that John Smith knows, and he's gonna tell everybody. So Frank Dodd goes home and he commits suicide. And that's it. That's it. Okay? You need to understand what's going on here. Okay? One of the main things in this book was this Frank Dodd character. And I thought, oh boy, we're gonna find out what the hell is wrong with this guy. We're gonna find out just what is going on in his sick mind. We're gonna find all sorts of things. We're going to address all sorts of avenues of the human psyche when it comes to evil, what have you, all of this good shit. And it does not happen. Frank Dodd commits suicide. That's it. End of story. And we kind of find out that he is the product of the archetypal, stereotypical. His father left the family, and he was a single child to a single mother. And of course, his mother, she wasn't right in the head. She, I guess, was over religious maybe, and she tended to punish and humiliate little Frank Dodd, and it seems that because of his mother's influence, that is why our boy Frank Dodd turned out the way that he was, which was a killer. And what's so deflating about all of this is that it is so obvious that Frank Dodd's mother, she's sick in the head, boy. She is just as crazy as her son, or maybe even crazier in some respects. And listen, the moment they discover that Frank Dodd has committed suicide, we don't even get a single line about his mother. When it is discovered that Frank Dodd has committed suicide, his mother is just on a couch crying or whatever, and that's it. Not a single mention afterwards, and I'm just like, what happened? What happened, Stephen King? What happened? It was just so depressing. Like, we could have had maybe a few chats with Frank Dodd's mother and discover that, yes, Frank Dodd was a fucking monster, but his mother, oh boy, let me tell you, she's a different kind of abomination, because she's not right in the head. You can see it clearly. And she is not mentioned a single time after Frank Dodd commits suicide, which is such a shame. Such a shame, fellas, people. It's just, it's unfortunate, okay? And here is where the Dead Zone goes into a direction that that to me was maybe, in my view at least, it was a bad decision. It was a terrible, terrible bad decision. Because afterwards, our boy John Smith, he keeps having visions of this guy Greg Stilson. At a rally, John Smith and Greg Stilson shake hands, and John Smith has these visions that this guy Greg Stilson will become president of the United States, and he will embark on World War III, nuclear, with a lot of countries. And afterwards, John Smith keeps getting more obsessed, and finally he decides, I gotta take this Stilson guy out to save humanity. And this is what I mean by saying that this decision is a bad choice. It is a bad direction, because this is what the book becomes about. This book becomes about this guy being obsessed with this politician and turning into assassin and trying to assassinate this guy to save the world. That is this. It's not even political. It's like a parody almost. Okay. So John Smith gets obsessed. He buys a rifle. He goes to this rally meeting and he tries to shoot and assassinate Greg Stilson. Okay. This is what the book ultimately revolves around, and it was just such a drag, such a chore to read. I was just like, what happened to this book? What happened? Where did it go wrong, right? But I'll tell you this. Where Stephen King's writing really shines is when John Smith has his visions, his prophecies about Greg Stilson, and he has this vision of the tiger and the blue lines, and it's nothing but mountains of corpses, and the tiger keeps on laughing as it walks among the corpses. That was some straight up amazing stuff. Okay, Stephen King comes out of the woodwork sometimes, and he just catches you off guard. Okay. But here is the main issue, okay? From what I understand, John Smith doesn't actually assassinate Greg Stilson. He misses. So Greg Stilson is alive and well at the end of this book. The problem is, and this was just a bit silly to me, as John Smith fires his rifle at Greg Stilson picks up a toddler and runs away while using the toddler as a human shield. And everybody sees, somebody takes up pictures. And I guess the insinuation is that because Greg Stilson used this kid as a human shield, everybody's done with him. Everybody is just like, bro, this guy is a terrible piece of doo-doo, and we don't want anything to do with him. So I guess Greg Stilson's political career is over. This is what the insinuation is, because it isn't said outright. And here's the problem. In John Smith's visions, Greg Stilson has to be killed because otherwise he will become president and unleash hellfire upon the world. So I guess the illusion is that, well, because his political career is over, Greg Stilson won't have a chance in hell of starting World War III. He won't have a chance of becoming president. His political career is over. Basically, everybody is done with this guy because he used a kid as a human shield. And I'm just like, okay, maybe that makes sense. But the problem is, okay, and maybe this is an oversight from Stephen King, but okay, you can say Greg Stilson's political career is over. Fine. But this guy, if you've been paying attention, Greg Stilson is a powerful guy, and he goes to any lengths to achieve his goals. The means justify the end. I mean, this guy is corrupt. He has connections. He has all sorts of scams and frauds in real estate, in whatever businesses. He has his own mega mall. He has a harem of mindless biker bodyguards who will do his bidding. And there is a little section in this book where we find out that an FBI agent was investigating Stilson's financial scams and whatnot, and this FBI agent just gets assassinated with a bomb. His car explodes, and you're telling me the FBI aren't like, so we sent this guy to investigate Stilson, who is obviously corrupt, and a week later, this FBI agent of ours, he got blown up. Isn't that a bit suspicious, huh? Like, it's just not realistic. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Just because his political career is over doesn't mean that we're saved. Okay, he still has a lot of power, a lot of connections. From what I remember, I think he has congressmen as friends, senators, maybe, pals in big business. If Greg Stilson plays his cards right, being the soulless hyena that he is, he could hide in the shadows for decades. He could finance puppets, okay, in all avenues. He could support all sorts of people. And these people might end up in positions of power in government. Somebody might be one of his puppets might end up as a presidential candidate. And this guy, Stilson, from the shadows, might puppeteer the president, who is his boy. Okay, so nothing is over to me. The day has not been saved. I just love how in the end of the book, Stephen King is just like, well, his political career's over, done deal. Armageddon has been postponed or completely stopped. It isn't so. It isn't so. If we're being realistic, okay. And let me tell you one thing. When it comes to the masses of people who are voters and who are interested in politics, things like these, even something so cowardly and disgusting as Stilson using a little kid as a human shield, that shit will be forgotten. I mean, they will meme on it, but it won't be like, oh, Stilson, he's that guy who used the kid as a human shield. That is essentially what happens over time. It's kind of forgotten. It's old news. We're gonna laugh about it, but that's about it, okay? So to me, Stilson has a chance. 20 years later, 30 years later, nothing is over. Nothing has been prevented because Stilson is alive and well, and he is a man with a mission. Okay, if we're being realistic, okay, but maybe I have way too many expectations, okay? But that's about it. If you enjoy this content, if you want to support your boy, I have a few books on Amazon. The link will be down below. If the link does not work, you can search my name on Amazon, Griffith Samsara. Thanks for watching. Keep on reading good books. See ya.